You mentioned Everton there. They were one of the clubs that backed the Premier League after they were thought they may be in favour of City on this situation. Wolves were also another team. Mashiri's obviously released that statement. Where do you see Everton's position on this? Why did they go with the Premier League, and what do you think of what Mashiri said?
I think the Premier League did something quite subtle and quite smart in that they put all of the amendments in one basket. So your only choice was not to vote for independent pieces of it. You couldn't say, well, I don't mind that clause there, but I'm not accepting that clause there. You had to vote either all for them or all against them. And what that meant was that anybody that liked the look of the shareholder loan provisions, which basically said that everything historically you could ignore if you effectively unwind it before January the 11th, that was quite attractive, I think, to a number of teams. I think that was attractive to Everton. I think it was attractive to Wolves. I think it was attractive to Chelsea. And all of those teams voted in favour. And I think they did that because they were concerned that if they didn't vote through these rules, there was a possibility that shareholder loans ends up being retrospective. And if shareholder loans ends up being retrospective, if you're a club like Everton with over £400 million, maybe even 450 of shareholder loan, let's say you apply an interest rate of 10% per annum on that, that's £45 million per year added into your PSR calculation, negative 45. I mean, they're just going to, they'd fail. So, so they couldn't risk that part of it. And if you also think about it, it's not just one £45 million hit; it's each year. So if you've got a 3-year calculation, that can be 3 times 45. I'm sort of saying it's an extreme example, but actually it's not even extreme because 10% is actually not the most that fair market value could be on that loan. Fair market value on that loan could even be 15%, even more. Some of Chelsea's debt is, and this we know this from public disclosures from Ares, who are one of their lenders, some of their third-party debt, their fair market debt, is at 16%. And so I think, in simple terms, I think Everton, Chelsea, Wolves, and Brighton definitely, but Brighton are in a slightly different position in that they'll just unwind their debt. But all of those clubs, I think, looked at it and went, "But we can't risk something going wrong with that historic analysis of that debt, so we'll just vote it through." And I think once they turned, then it was impossible for the vote to be rejected. But I think it was really a lot about combining the shareholder loan provisions as a resolution with the other one into one resolution, as opposed to into 2 separate votes that got them over the line on that. But we'll see. I mean, Mashiri has said he will write off or convert the debt into equity, which will mean that there won't be any consequences going forward, which I think is what will also happen at Brighton, probably at Arsenal, probably at a smaller, further down the league table of debt. It will happen further down as well, but the big ones are Arsenal, Everton, and Brighton. Between them, they've got about £1 billion of shareholder loan, so they do need to do something about
that. Absolutely. In terms of Everton, the takeover is still ongoing, of course. Friedkin hasn't received Premier League approval yet. Is that quite surprising, given that the deal was agreed in September?
Well, we talked about timescales on that. I would have thought it's imminent. But, we've not had any reason that it's not. That 777 situation with ACAP, as it's known, and Leadenhall Partners in the US, I don't think is going to be resolved anytime soon. So I doubt they're waiting for that. If they are, that would be quite worrying, but I don't think they would be. I think it's just a case of going through the Premier League's process. And it just, the thing we don't know is exactly when they applied to the Premier League for approval on the owners and directors test. There's nothing from anything that we know publicly, there's nothing that should prevent Friedkin getting approval. So assuming that that's the case, assuming they put the application in, It's really just a passage of time and just, doing those checks and sending in those documents. But they'll be keen to get it over the line now, especially with January coming, although I think they've got very limited scope for spending in January.